back to the Daily Grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back pickle biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time. MMA.
Kelvin Gastelum was also in attendance for UFC 220, and he spoke with the media, and he spoke with, there's a lot going on in the middleweight division, and with Robert Whitaker being out indefinitely now, and Luke Rockhold versus Yoel Romero for the interim title, Kelvin Gastelum was originally in consideration for the regular title fight. So now that there's an interim title fight and he wasn't considered, he said he was disappointed with the fact that he wasn't considered over Yoel Romero for the title fight, and he also said some things that are pretty interesting. So let's get into it. Kelvin Gastelum, we know, is a former welterweight. He had his weight cutting issues, so the UFC forced him up to middleweight, where he's also almost had a weight cutting issue. I don't know if he's actually missed weight at middleweight, I can't recall, but I do know that, in his last fight he had a bad weight cut as far as maybe a little bit of the towel. He used a little bit of the towel, but when he made weight, he actually didn't use the towel. His first attempt, he used the towel, but his second attempt, he did not use the towel, and he actually made weight. But still, it was close for Kelvin Gastelum, who has been notorious for weight cutting issues. So Kelvin Gastelum now is at middleweight. The thing about Kelvin Gastelum at middleweight is, as a former welterweight coming up from a 15-pound lighter division, he's a little undersized. So there's a lot of guys that he would be the smaller fighter against. And we saw when Kelvin Gastelum fought Chris Weidman, really, he doesn't have the bigger wrestlers of the division probably are going to have success versus Gastelum, so he's going to have to be smart with the fights that he takes in the middleweight division. He can't just be a Donald Cerrone of the middleweight division who will fight any middleweight anywhere, anytime. Kelvin Gastelum is going to have to fight either the guys that are right outside of their prime, who he's had a lot of success against, like the Johnny Hendricks, the Tim Kennedys, the Vitor Belforts, and the Michael Bispings of the world. Those guys Kelvin Gastelum has had success against. He actually won via KO TKO versus Tim Kennedy. He knocked out Vitor Belfort, but the fight was overturned due to marijuana. And then he also knocked out Michael Bisping. But a lot of people would argue that Vitor Belfort and Michael Bisping specifically aren't really in their prime right now, so it's not as demanding of a title shot as Kelvin Gastelum might hope, and that might be something that played into the reason he's not getting a title shot today. But one thing that Kelvin Gastelum did admit during speaking with the media was that now, with Robert Whitaker out indefinitely and the interim fight being scheduled, that all of the middleweight plans kind of just got set back. So now he acknowledged he might have to take another fight before getting the title shot, but he did say the only fight he wants is a fight that will get him the title shot. So he's not interested in the winner of Jacare Brunson. He's not really interested in a Chris Weidman rematch. He did say he would take the fight if offered, but he's not, just looking for it. And so the thing about Kelvin Gastelum is, he said, it's kind of like the top five's here and I'm just over here. And it's like, a lot of people, like let's say the Kamaru Usman of the welterweight division, or even Robert Whitaker or Derek Brunson, these guys aren't really able to just sit out and say, I'm going to wait for the fight that gets me a title shot. You might have to beat a couple of top contenders. That's what Robert Whitaker did, the current middleweight champion, who had to fight, for one, he had to beat Derek Brunson, then he had to fight Jacare, then he had to earn the interim title from Yoel Romero. So there's routes you take to get to the title. You might have to beat some top contenders, and now especially for Kelvin Gastelum, with the interim title going on, we don't know how long Robert Whitaker's going to be out. We just found out what his injury actually is. He's got a pretty bad staph infection. I'll do a separate video on that right after this. But Kelvin Gastelum might have to fight a top 5 guy, and the reporter were asking him, so who in the top 5 really is there for you to fight? And actually, I might have to go to UFC.com for this video, because it's like, you think about the top 5, Chris Weidman, that's probably not a fight for Kelvin Gastelum to take. Michael Bisping, he already fought. I don't even think he's in the top 5 anymore. GSP, he's out. He's not a fight for He's not a fight that Kelvin Gastelum can take. Luke Rock, maybe this is the only fight I see for Kelvin Gastelum, because Jacare is already scheduled, and he said he's not interested in the winner of Jacare Brunson, really. Or else, I mean, Kelvin Gastelum versus Jacare would be a good fight for Kelvin Gastelum to show where he's at as a middleweight. Not too interested in that fight, even though if Jacare beats Brunson, I think beating Jacare would put you in, you know, the category for a title shot. So there's Jacare up there. There's also Yoel Romero. That's what I'm gonna say. The only other fight aside from the winner of Jacare Brunson that I see for Kelvin Gastelum is the loser of Luke Rockhold and Yoel Romero. Now, the winner of Luke Rockhold and Yoel Romero is going to be probably unifying his belt with Robert Whitaker. But the loser, either Yoel or Luke, would probably be a good fight for Kelvin if the only fight he wants is the fight that's going to get him a title shot. But even then, we will say, okay, yeah, but you're fighting somebody coming off of a loss. So we'll see what happens with Kelvin Gastelum's future at middleweight. But yeah, he's in a little bit of a sticky situation. He's going to have to be smart with the fights he takes, because he's an undersized middleweight. So he might have a hard time against a lot of these bigger, better middleweights in the division. So with that being said, it is what it is. Let the full-time family know what you think about this in the comments. Kelvin Gastelum is disappointed he wasn't considered for the interim title fight at UFC 221. Luke Rockhold versus Yoel Romero. I'm out.
Bye, Felicia.